Two men buy watches in the same boutique on the same afternoon. One spends around $6,000 on a Japanese watch that reviewers call one of the best finished timepieces at any price. The other spends a fifth of that on a Swiss chronograph with a plastic bezel. 12 months later, the man who bought the expensive, beautifully made watch has lost more money than the second man paid for his entire watch. Neither of them did anything wrong. Both watches work perfectly. And that is exactly the problem, because the thing that collapsed in value was never the watch. It was the assumption underneath the purchase, the belief that quality protects your money. It doesn't. And by the end of this, you'll be able to look at almost any watch and estimate before you pay how much of that price you're about to lose the moment it leaves the counter. Here's the uncomfortable part. The single best-made watch on this list depreciates just as hard as the worst. Hold that thought. It's the whole story. Most buyers believe a simple thing. Pay for quality, and quality holds. It feels obviously true. It's how houses work, and tools, and good furniture. So a man walks in, sees a real mechanical movement, hand-finished bridges, a serious brand, and concludes the price is anchored to something solid. What he's actually paying for is two different things wearing one price tag. One part is the object. The other part is demand. How many people want to buy that exact reference from him later, with no box, no discount, and no patience? Only the second part protects your money. And on most watches, that second part barely exists. Start with the one everyone recognizes. Tag Heuer. The Carrera and the Formula One are, for many men, the first real Swiss watch. That appeal is genuine. Motorsport heritage. A name people know, a price that feels like luxury without a mortgage. The Formula One often retails somewhere around $2,000. It also routinely changes hands secondhand for little more than half of that. The Carrera has a subtler trap. Every time Tag launches a new generation, the previous one quietly loses ground because there's nothing scarce holding it up. Here's the fact that matters for your wallet. Tag now builds genuinely capable in-house movements like the Heuer 2, alongside models running outsourced Swiss calibers. The engineering improved. The resale barely moved. Buy one new if you love it. Just never tell yourself you're investing. A tag is a watch to wear, not a watch to sell. That's not an insult. It's a category, and it repeats, which brings a fair question. If a better movement doesn't fix depreciation, what does? Keep it in mind, because the next brand spent real money testing exactly that theory. Breitling. The Navitimer is one of the most storied pilot's watches ever made. That busy slide rule bezel is authentic aviation history, not decoration. For years, Breitling leaned on modified third-party movements. Then, it invested heavily in its own in-house chronograph, the B01, precisely to answer the "you're just paying for an ETA" complaint. It's a legitimately good movement. And a Navitimer still frequently sells used for something like a third to nearly half below its retail price. Sit with that. The company did the expensive, honorable thing. Real in-house engineering. And the market shrugged. The lesson isn't that Breitling makes bad watches, it makes excellent ones. The lesson is that movement quality and resale value are almost unrelated. If you want a Navitimer, and you should if it moves you, buy it 2 years old and let the first owner absorb the fall. Now the surprise, right in the middle, where it does the most damage to your assumptions. Hublot. The classic fusion is the affordable doorway into a brand built on bold design and celebrity wrists. Independent market data through 2025 shows entry. Hublot models frequently losing 40 to 50% of their value inside the first year. One of the steepest first-year drops of any established brand. Many of these references are built on a modified third-party base movement dressed in an expensive case. So a large share of what you pay is design, marketing, and presence. There is nothing dishonest about that. Presence is real. People buy Hublot to be seen. And it works, but understand precisely what you're buying. An experience with a very short financial half-life. If the wrist presence is worth eating half the price in year one, buy it with open eyes. If you thought you were buying something that holds, you weren't. Here's a check you can run before you ever hand over money. Call it the liquidity test. 5 questions. 1. Can you walk into an authorized dealer and buy this exact watch today? No wait list. If yes, that's a warning, not a convenience. Available means abundant, and abundant means weak resale. 2. What's the gap between retail and gray market price? A wide gap is the depreciation printed in advance. 3. Open a second-hand marketplace and count how many are listed right now. Dozens of identical references means you're one seller in a crowd. 4. Is it current production or discontinued? Fixed supply supports price. Ongoing production erodes it. 5. And this is the one everyone gets backwards. Ignore the movement. It barely predicts resale. Run those 5 questions, and you'll forecast the loss on almost any watch in about 90 seconds, standing in the store. Test it on the 4th watch, Mont Blanc. On paper, it should hold. It's owned by a serious luxury group. Some models even carry a genuinely respected in-house chronograph movement, and the finishing is real. But most people associate the name with pens, not watchmaking. And demand follows perception, not spec sheets. Some Mont Blanc references have been reported losing up to 60% of their value within about 2 years. A well-made watch from a real group running a real movement, and the resale market treats it like an afterthought. By now, you can see why. It fails the liquidity test on every line except quality. And quality was never the line that mattered, which leaves the last watch, the one that proves the entire point. Grand Seiko, the Spring Drive Snowflake, around $6,000. This is not a weak watch. Its case is finished with Zaratsu polishing, mirror flat surfaces done by hand, that genuinely humble watches costing far more. Its spring drive movement, caliber 9R65, is made in-house, glides the second's hand in a perfectly smooth sweep, holds a 72-hour power reserve, and keeps time to about 15 seconds a month. By any honest measure of craftsmanship, it outclasses most of this list. And it still typically sells used for meaningfully below retail, with essentially no collector premium, because the second-hand market for it is thin. Read that again. The best engineered watch here depreciates like the rest, not despite its quality, but because quality is not what the resale market pays for. It pays for demand, and demand for Grand Seiko hasn't caught up to the watchmaking, which, if you're a buyer rather than a seller, is the best news on this list. Someone else eats the loss, and you inherit one of the finest watches on earth for a discount. So let me argue the other side honestly, because it's strong. Hand finishing is real. In-house movements are real. Heritage, service networks, the feeling on your wrist, all real, and none of it shows up on a resale ledger. If you buy a watch to keep it, depreciation is a number that never touches you. You paid for an object you enjoy every day, and it does its job for decades. Judged that way, every watch here can be worth every dollar. Depreciation only becomes a wound if you plan to sell, or if you told yourself a story about value the watch was never going to honor. So go back to those 2 men in the boutique. The expensive watch gave its owner superb engineering and daily pleasure, and took a large, permanent loss the moment ownership transferred. The cheaper one gave less watchmaking and a smaller, softer loss. Roughly speaking, the measurable part of a watch's price is the case, the movement, the materials, the finishing, and it's real. The part that protects your money is demand and scarcity, and on most watches, it's close to zero. Pay for the first part if you'll keep it. Pay for the second part only if you'll sell it. Just never confuse the two, because a watch doesn't lose value the second you buy it. It loses value the second you believed it wouldn't. If you'd rather judge watches by movements, prices, and market data than by logos, subscribe. That's the entire promise here. And next time, we do the opposite list, the handful of watches you can buy new and sell years later for the same money, sometimes more, and why almost none of them are the ones people expect.